Hi, so in this video I'm going to talk about not just the ABS function again, but also these includes that you have, so headers, and where to find existing functionality that you can use instead of writing your own functionality or basically reinventing the wheel each time. Previously I talked about this ABS function, so I'll just build around this and this will work here. This will return 16. I have this temporary variable which I set to -16. And to do the ABS of that. Now a funny thing here, if I go and comment this line out, if I build, you'll see we get errors. Of course we don't have console output and this end line right here. That's because those are in the IO stream, but this right here is also now suddenly undefined, this ABS. Okay, you can see in the error list, ABS is undefined. So now we might think, well, where does this come from anyway? Because this is a math thing. This has nothing really to do with input and output, right? This is some math function. If I uncomment that and I comment out this namespace, you'll see this will still work or exist basically, but these are not defined. Can Control F5 to build, run. If you go to the error list, see out an end line is undefined, but this one right here is defined. So from this we can see that it comes from this header here, okay, this include. So I did not talk about this in too much detail in the video on that, so where we used ABS, because it's quite a long discussion and I wanted to kind of get to the point in that video. But in some cases you might actually have to go and include other headers, such as the C standard library or the C math. So this is important, which is why I'm doing this video on it right now. Now we are using the Microsoft compiler here, so this will work in this case. But sometimes if you use something else like GCC or something else, if you go and write your programs in CodeBlocks, for example, or some other IDE using another compiler, you might not have the same results that I have right here. Okay, so you can go to this website, cppreference.com, and what I'll do is I'll go to the headers, so that's cppreference.com/w/cpp/header. I'll link you to this, so that's fine. And you can see all of the headers that are available that we can include with already existing functionality that is tested, and proven in production, so that we don't have to go and rewrite all of that code and again kind of reinvent the wheel each time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to search here for cstdlib. Control left click on that to open that up in a new tab right there. And then under here, numerics library, you can see CMath as well. Control left click on that. A bunch of things here. You have IO stream, for example. We're already familiar with that. You left click on that. I'll just open it up here. You can see some of the objects that it has, CIN, Cout, and so on. You also have CERR for standard error and a few other things that I have not discussed just yet. Okay, so let's look at this standard library header, cstdlib. So an important note here is that this header was originally in the C standard library as stdlib.h. So both of these will basically provide the same functionality. But so if you want to include it, you include this one. Again, this is kind of the older one. Alright, I'll scroll down until I get ABS. Mainly for integers, you can see ABS, LABS for long, LLABS for long integers. Left click on that and you can see all of those. So int, long, and so on. You have a bunch of examples as well. It includes that standard library. Now if I go to the CMath one that I opened up, you also have something called ABS. So this is for floats. So you can see ABS, if ABS, if ABS, if, and so on. If I open that up, you can see some of the available functions that we have basically. They return different things. So this one returns a float, this one a double, this one a long double, and so forth. Down here, again, I have basic examples as well. Another thing that I'd like to note with CMath, and I'll talk about this again later in this video here, is it includes the standard C library header, math.h, and adds the associated names in the standard namespace. So basically these two once again have similar functionality. Okay, it basically has the same functionality. The CMath include is the newer one. This one is the standard C library one. Go back to Visual Studio here for a second. So why is this stuff important? Well, sometimes you don't have this included. Okay, let's say I take that out again. And maybe I'll comment this line out as well. Uncomment this that I wrote previously. And now you can see this ABS is undefined. I'll go and include that standard library, and now you can see this is defined. This will work fine. I'll just Control B to build that. And you can see we don't have any errors. I mean, you can run it too, but it won't print anything out, right? It won't get any errors in this case. I like to note you can left click in here, press Ctrl, Shift and Spacebar, and now you can see again the function prototypes or declarations. You have a bunch of things called overloads, so you have a bunch of different versions of the same function, and we'll discuss those in more detail. So overloads in more detail in Module 102. And here you can scroll through and you can see these will return different things. So you have long, double, float, and so forth. Let's just go and uncomment that for a second. Now you might be wondering, like, why does this work then without this or without the CMath included? Well, this is a bit tedious, so just bear with me here. I'll go and right click on IOStream, and then I'll go to Document, IOStream. You can see this is Microsoft stuff, right? So now we have this include. You can note to the right, it opens that file to the right, so you can just close it off if you want. And our stuff that we are busy with is to the left here. So just go back, right click on this. This is also an include. You can see I have a bunch of stuff in here, right? We don't care about how all of this stuff works. I just want this include, which is input stream. Right click on that, go to Document, IOStream. Now you can see this includes some output stream as well. So right click on that, go to that. This includes something else. Each time you can see it changes the name to match what it is that we are viewing. So I'm currently viewing this OStream file. You can see this OStream header. So another one, right click on here, this is iOS. Go to that document, not quite there yet. You can see I have a bunch of stuff. So once again, right click on here, go to the next one. We don't need to worry about how this stuff works at this point. I just want to show you that this header includes the CLimit, CMath. Here is the CSTD, that standard library that I talked about previously. So we have both in here. Wow, so that was a long one. Basically, this IOStream also includes that standard library, the CMath library, and so forth. So I'll comment that out again. I mentioned that the CMath, this CMath header, includes things like FABS, FABSF, for example. So let's try and do this. FABSF. And this seems to work fine. Okay, you might get some warnings because you are trying to convert possible loss of data. This has to do with floats. You can see it returns float. If you do Ctrl-Shift Spacebar, you can see this returns a float. But we have an int here. And you can change these to floats if you want. I just want to demonstrate here that this is available, but we don't have CMath included. Right? We only have this one included, which mainly has these things in here, which relate to integers, things like LABS and so on. So how does this work? Well, once again, you can right click on this, go to that document, and here you can see math.h. So include math.h. As I mentioned, CMath is simply this math that is kind of wrapped up in the standard namespace. So these two things has pretty much the same functionality. I'll also go and include the CMath header. Right click on that, go to that document, and as you might have guessed, this also includes CSTD library. In this case, not the std library.h. It instead has the CSTD library thing. This is the one that you should use, okay, instead of the .h one, as I mentioned. Because if I comment this out now, this will now return that long. You can see long, that is what the two L's are for, or long. This works fine, but this, as I mentioned, is in that C standard library. So here, C std library, that LABS, LLABS is in there, not in the C math one. But as I mentioned, if you go to CMath, go to that document, you can see it is included. In the CMath standard header, you have this include. So that is why it works, even though we don't include it explicitly. Now, we'd like to note that in some cases it might be a good idea to include it explicitly, but it's often the case that if something works, then I leave it out. So because this worked previously, when we had IOStream, I left these headers out because, as we've seen, these both are included in the IOStream already. So I'm just including something twice, which is unnecessary. But in some cases, you might have to go and actually include the specific stuff that you want to use. Okay, so in this next section, we'll talk about some of the functions that we have available to us in the CMath header. Now, we'd like to mention once again that in many written tutorials and in other courses as well, you will go and include things that might be included already. And so you might often see that I don't do that, so I'll explain the headers, mainly because, again, I don't like including something twice, right? But in your case, maybe you get an error, so maybe you might have to go and include that header. So that's why I'm doing this video. And what I'd like you to do is just give this page, a quick read, see what you have. You might find something interesting that you'd like to go and test and, go and practice with. So for example, if I scroll down again, here to numerics, we have CMath, so I'll go to that. And we've already seen the ABS function. A few other things that you can go and try is, for example, the square root, sine, cosine, and so forth. A few other things that might be easy for you to go and experiment with is the ceiling one, the ceiling function, and then also the floor one as well. So in the next example, I'm not actually going to show you these two purposely so that you can go and, click on here, go and look at how these are used, and then experiment with them and try and get them to work. Some of this stuff might be a bit weird, might be a bit difficult at first to try and get them to work, but these two are fairly easy, I think, to get started with, right? If you want to go through here as an exercise. Okay, so I'll open up Visual Studio and we'll look at a few examples of what is included in the CMath header. So in this quick demonstration, I include CMath, and in the main function I have this double called temp. I set that to 16, and I have an integer called power, and I set that to 2. I have 3 couts here, so temp raised to the power is, and then I do this power function, and I pass it in temp and power. If I click in here, Control Shift Spacebar, you can see this will return a double, and the function takes in as arguments 2 doubles in this case, so in this overload. But actually, if you press the down arrow, you can see you have this up and down. You can press up and down, so I'll go down 1 or 2 here. You can see I have a double and an integer. You can now press the left and right buttons. So as soon as the caret goes to the right of that comma, the second parameter will highlight, and you can see we have an int. To the left we have a double. So again, you can use the left and right arrows, and you can also use the up and down arrows. And then this should stay right here. This IntelliSense pop-up, or this helper, and we can see the header or the prototype of that function. So as I mentioned, you can also pass in 2 doubles and 2 floats as well, and so on. In that case, it will return a float actually. So I have a couple of options. These are called overloads, which again we'll talk about in more detail in Module 102. But I wanted to mention you can pass into integers here, doesn't matter. Same thing with the square root. It's going to return here a double as well. The sine function here will also return a double. So in the second cout, I have the square root of that temp variable again is, and then I do the square root function, and then finally this sine as well. Control F5 to build and run that. 16 raised to the power of 2 is 256. The square root of 16 is 4, and the sine of 16 is minus 0.28, and so on. So the whole point of this demonstration was to show that these functions exist. We don't have to write functions for each and every math equation and such that we need to do. Look at what's available in the header files, in the standard library. In many cases you can find other libraries for game development, for example, such as in Unreal Engine 4, UI development such as in Qt, for example, and many other examples exist as well.